What is the hardest obstacle to overcome in life? Some might say heartbreak, the pain of losing someone dear. Others might point to envy of what someone else has. Or perhaps the anger that flares when the world feels overwhelmingly unjust. Indeed, it can all pile up like a mountain, pressing down on us at every turn. But the most relentless enemy isn't out there in the world. It's lurking in our own minds, the one who stares back at us in the mirror. Because in truth, the fiercest battles we fight are against our own feelings, not external forces. And of all those emotions, few cut deeper than failure. It's the one that makes us blame ourselves when circumstances go wrong, convincing us that we alone are at fault. In that moment, the towering mountain isn't out in the world, it's the weight we carry inside ourselves. Failure is a very curious thing. We all know exactly how it feels, yet each of us defines it in our own personal way. For some, failure is simply the act of giving up, the moment we choose to stop pushing forward. While for others, it's just a misstep, a single mistake in a much larger test of skill. But no matter how we see it, one thing remains true. Failure touches us all. And strangely enough, I think video games are one of the clearest, most powerful ways we learn how to face failure. Not only how to cope with it, but how to use it to grow stronger, avoiding unnecessary pain along the way. Think about it. Nearly every game you've ever played revolves around the idea of failing and getting up to try again. Scan through your library of games. I'd be shocked if you found even one that didn't expect you to slip up at least once. Of course, the consequences vary wildly. In some worlds, your mistakes come with a swift and merciless punishment, instant death and cruel march back to the last checkpoint. Yes, Dark Souls, I'm looking your way. In others, you might simply lose some health for a few coins, pick yourself back up, and try again immediately. But regardless of how severe the consequence, the message remains the same. Failing is not the end, it's part of the journey, a necessary step on your path to improvement. Games don't shame you for stumbling. Instead, they quietly encourage you to learn, adapt, and come back stronger. And maybe that's exactly how we should approach our failures in the real world too. We've all been there, a pixel away from success, a single movement away from beating a hard boss, and in those moments it feels unfair, painful even, at the experiences that happen on the screen rather than in the real world. And after you sit down and try again, you might have found that you fail again, and at times you feel you've become worse. You start questioning if you're able to win at all, if your progress up to here wasn't a fluke, a lucky circumstance. Perhaps you're not as good in gaming as you imagined. The thoughts are running in your mind, but yet we take ourselves together and fight again, because there is no boss that can defeat a real gamer. Many of us fought some of the hardest bosses, and despite all the failures, we emerged successful in the end. We persevered, we didn't turn hollow, as fans of some genres would say. And we often forget that this is how we should be in real life too. At times we treat our real life too seriously, because in the game, our character always stands up. He never gets discouraged, he's always ready to try again as many times as it takes to win. And while I know it's not so easy to do the same under the weight of the modern world, but in the end, the weight of it does not matter at all. Since the only way to move forward in this life is to deal with it. Sometimes, similar as in games, we think too much, taking all the weight this world has to give in one fell swoop. But games teach us another valuable lesson, one that we often overlook in our day-to-day lives. They remind us to tackle challenges piece by piece, to face difficulty one step, one level, or one enemy at a time. When we get overwhelmed by life's complexities, maybe we should think of our struggles like levels in a game. Instead of worrying about every future obstacle at once, we could just focus on overcoming the next immediate challenge, the next small victory right in front of us. Think about how you approach a tough fight in a game. You don't run straight into danger blindly, well, maybe sometimes, but eventually you stop and strategize. You pause and ask yourself, what am I missing? How do I adjust my approach? Games train you to see every setback not as proof of your limitations, but as an invitation to adapt and grow stronger. Every time you fail a boss in Elden Ring or Dark Souls, every time you miss that perfect jump in Celeste, or every time you forget to plant that damned cauliflower in spring so you need to wait a whole year to complete the year's bundle in Stardew Valley, it still brings you closer to success. Next time you will know when to dodge, next time you will plan your movements better, next time you will plan that planting of seeds in advance. Now imagine applying this mindset to life. Instead of feeling crushed by a setback at work, school, or relationships, we could see each moment of failure as valuable feedback. Just like figuring out the boss pattern, maybe there is something we missed, something new that we can learn from the struggle. Life, after all, isn't too different from a challenging game. It rewards persistence, creativity, and willingness to learn from our mistakes. And perhaps, most importantly, games show us something critical about ourselves. Deep down, we're stronger and more resilient than we realize. When you finally land that finishing blow on a boss you've fought 100 times, it isn't just a relief you feel, it's pride. Pride in your patience, in your perseverance, and your refusal to quit. Games remind us over and over again that we have the strength inside of us, even when it feels like we've lost it in the real world. But games also sometimes intentionally place us into scenarios designed specifically for us to fail. Think about all those scripted losses or seemingly impossible fights where your only choice is to accept defeat. At first glance, these moments feel unfair, almost cruel, as if the game is deliberately mocking our abilities. Yet beneath the surface, these situations carry powerful lessons as well. They teach us humility, acceptance, and remind us that sometimes the most valuable choice is to recognize our limits for now, and that it's perfectly okay not to win every battle immediately. In fact, these moments of intentional failure often offer us the richest growth. Think back to a game where your strength was stripped away, forcing you into vulnerability. It wasn't pleasant, it probably felt frustrating, and even helpless at times, but it also likely left a lasting impression. Through that vulnerability, you discovered empathy, patience, or perhaps realized your strength lies not just in victory, but in perseverance. Games show us clearly failure isn't a judgment of who we are, it's a glimpse at who we can become. And if we take a closer look, games often subtly reward our failures, transforming each setback into a meaningful step forward. Consider how each defeat typically grants you experience points, skill progression, or strategic insight. Even if you don't win immediately, you're steadily growing stronger and smarter. What if we reframed our real-life setbacks this way, viewing every misstep not as something to hide from, but as experience points earned toward greater wisdom, resilience, and skill? More importantly, games also remind us that we're not alone in our failures. When you're stuck facing a tough boss or a puzzle, your natural response is often to seek advice from your friends, communities, or online guides. In gaming, it's instinctual to reach out for help without a shame or hesitation. Yet in real life, many of us isolate ourselves in failure, thinking it's too personal or too embarrassing to share. Perhaps it's time we borrow this mindset from gaming, recognizing that seeking support doesn't diminish our strength, it amplifies it. We're often afraid to ask for help when it comes to real life. We often fail to realize that if some random gamer from who knows where had the time and willingness to help you through the game, to write a guide, to spend some time with you to defeat a boss, like Let Me Solo Her guide did, it probably also means that if you call your friend from high school, he might find some time for you. If you call up your family, they might be happy to help you. People, after all, by their nature, are communal creatures. And while we try to live our lives more and more individualistically and alone in more recent times, it doesn't mean that we are not willing to help each other. At their core, games provide a safe space for us to experiment freely with failure. They allow us to stumble repeatedly, taking away the stigma and the fear of getting it wrong. With every failure in game, we grow increasingly comfortable and courageous. Imagine carrying the same courage into everyday life. Embracing setbacks not as defeats, but as familiar opportunities to try again, only smarter and braver this time. So, the next time you're faced with real-life failure, when your courage is drained, your confidence is shaken, and defeat feels all but certain, pause for just a moment and remind yourself of the countless trials you've already overcome. Think back to every boss you eventually defeated, every puzzle you eventually solved, and every impossible level you somehow managed to beat. Remember that each of those moments began with uncertainty, frustration, maybe even a hint of despair. But you pushed through, adapting and growing, transforming each setback into wisdom and each loss into strength. Because if gaming has taught us anything, it's that the failure isn't a permanent condition. It's simply another step on a path to becoming the best version of ourselves. Each stumble you face today is the foundation for tomorrow's victory. A tiny piece of experience that quietly strengthens you for challenges yet unseen. You already possess the skill to analyze, adapt, and push forward. Gaming has ingrained it deeply within you. Ultimately, games reveal for us the fundamental truth. Courage isn't about never feeling defeated, it's about choosing to stand up once more, even after you've fallen countless times. Life, like the games you love, is rarely straightforward and never without setbacks. But just as every game over screen you faced was followed by the chance to try again, every real-life failure presents a similar opportunity. One more chance to level up, improve your approach, and embrace resilience. So, carry forward that gamer spirit, knowing that every challenge, no matter how insurmountable it appears, is just another boss battle, another puzzle, and another level waiting for you to be conquered. You've been here before, and you've done this countless times, and you'll do it again. After all, you're a gamer, and that means you've already mastered the most valuable lesson games have to offer: how to transform failure into your greatest ally.